Are we ready?
Easier.
Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of April the 6th, 2015. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a period of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The order of the business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you're speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Please spell your name. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under the third reading. On the second and last meetings of the month immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date, nor planned for future agenda. This is not an open meetings night. Teresa, you want to start with the Mayor's Award of Excellence, please?
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, thank you once again for allowing me to step forward and present to you the monthly Mayor's Award of Excellence, this month for February, being presented to Assistant City Treasurer Joel Whitrock. Joel's worked for the city since 1999. He was nominated by the city treasurer herself, Melinda Jones, in the categories of customer relations, loss prevention, and productivity, all for his work on the database for the police department alarm registration program. In May of last year, the city treasurer's office took over the database for the alarm registration program, as well as the billings and the posting of payments. The city had used a private billing company, but its contract was not renewed because of citizen complaints. Among the problems Joel faced were accounts that had not been invoiced and accounts that were not valid due to the closing of a business, for example, or a move by the homeowner. The billing company had also collected about $15,000 in revenue that it was unable to apply the payments but it was unable to apply the payments to the correct accounts. In some cases, there were duplicate payments. Melinda wrote that Joel did a detailed review of the database and cleaned up the information so the office was able to operate with accurate and current data. That's the sum and substance of it. The review included tracing all prior payments and invoiced amounts to determine the correct amounts that had been due, collected, or overpaid. He processed more than 170 refunds, returning about $9,500 to Lincoln citizens, and recovering about $4,800 in revenue for the city itself. By December, he had reduced the balance in the unearned revenue account from $15,000 to about $500. Joel closed about 1,900 inactive or incorrect accounts. Melinda said he also added 402 accounts by reviewing police calls to determine if the alarm registration city code was applicable, and then creating an account to collect the applicable fees. Since the city took over the billing and collection, it has collected about $45,000 more than the billing company had for the same period of time. Melinda said Joel did his database review in addition to his regular duties. She wrote, the city's success in the alarm registration comes from many employees who played a role in the development of our system, from the creating of the database to creating forms and FAQs on the website. However, it was due to Joel's continued efforts in drilling down to the details of these thousands of accounts to determine their correct status, he has cleaned up the information to allow the system to be more successful and more respondent to the citizens. So it's my pleasure to present Joel Whitlock with the Mayor's Award of Excellence for February. Please join me in congratulating Joel for his hard work and his commitment to the city of Lincoln. Joel, thank you. I think Melissa wanted to say a few words, as well as Steve Hupkirk.
Mayor Beitler, City Council members, I'm Melinda Jones, the City Treasurer, and I nominated Joel for this award. A few years ago, Joel came to me and said, why can't we just take over the billing from the vendor company that was doing our billing? We were taking payments then, but we were unable to help customers or citizens with calls coming into us about their account because we didn't have access to the data. We were unable to solve any of their problems or issues with the billings. So we took over the program last May, and we found the data had several duplicate payments, accounts that hadn't been billed for the last several years, wrong addresses on the accounts, and approximately $15,000 was held in an escrow account that wasn't properly being looked into to properly post those monies to those customers' accounts. Joel dug deep into those accounts, reviewed every one of them transaction by transaction, made corrections, applied payments to those accounts for the funds that we had, and made refunds to thousands of dollars to the citizens of Lincoln for duplicate payments or wrong payments. Today, we were able to respond to the public immediately with helping them with their questions, solve their problems, and provide better service. We have increased our revenues by making sure all alarm users are invoiced correctly and timely. To update some of the information that was in the nomination, today comparing our revenues for the past 12 months from the previous 12 months have increased 36%. That's a $75,000 increase in that time frame. Even though our intentions were mainly just to improve customer service when we took over the billing, we have also increased our revenues. Today we have 92 unregistered users compared to 1,251 at the time we took over the billing. We continue the effort to make sure all alarm users are registered in the program to implement a fair program. Joel took ownership of the program and cleaned it up. I believe the program is a success today because of Joel and the rest of my staff that assisted him. He's very deserving of this award and another example of excellence in staffing the city of Lincoln has. Thank you for making this recognition.
I think just about everything has been said, but I would like to point out that Joel led the effort on the implementation of the system, but we did get a wonderful data system produced by our folks from Information Services and the Finance Department, and Chris Plock and Jim Anderson are out here and did another wonderful job on that, which helps not only us but the citizens using the system. And we also had input from the 911 Center, LPD, and Lincoln Fire and Rescue as well. Their input was key to putting together a good system, so greatly appreciate that. And I'd just like to mention, I too think Joel is very, very deserving of this recognition. Thank you.
I guess first off, I'd like to thank the mayor for having the award. It seems to be a habit here. This is the second recognition I've gotten from you. Earlier this year, I got a perfect attendance letter. I didn't did that. I suppose next you'll probably send me a friend request on Facebook or something. I don't have an account. Well, that's not true. I do. I just haven't been on it for like 5 years now. Last year we had several meetings. Chris Plock and Jim Anderson from IS. They just do create wonderful systems. Anytime we've needed a change or a tweak or something, they're on it, and within hours to maybe a day or two, they're changing the system for what we need. Heather Baker from the police department, a kind of was the liaison of that for getting all the police department data. Leo Benish was at a lot of those meetings, coordinating with the fire department. Jenny Turchek, who's also in my office, who now answers a lot of the calls from the public on that. And also Jeff Kirkpatrick, since I think he kind of wrote the law, so he was kind of guiding us on other things on how the system needed to work. The others in my staff, Melissa, Angie, and Pat, also being backup, helping answer the phones, anybody that walks in to answer questions. And of course, Melinda for nominating me for the award. I think Cry Wolf was the name of the company that was doing it before we took over. They were also trying to sell us their program that they had, and after 4 years of kind of seeing how their program really didn't work, we had let them know we were just going to try and come up with something on our own, and they just wanted to make sure that we weren't heading into the Amazon with shorts and no bug spray. And I think the numbers that we have put together, I think we're doing just fine. I think I looked at the numbers this morning. I think when Melinda wrote this up, we were like 45,000 ahead, and I think we're almost 75,000 ahead of the pace that they were collecting for the year before. And I'd just like to say thank you. And that's it.
Before you go, I just would introduce those people that might be right there with you, just in case.
Oh, okay.
In the interest of tranquility.
My wife, Lisa, my daughter, Jocelyn, and my mother, Joyce.
Good move. Thank you for everything. We appreciate it. Great job.
Cleared the room.
Okay, Teresa, first
All right.
item, please.
We would request those giving testimony to please clearly state your name and address and to sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. Our first item are public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 14.
Anybody would like to speak to these items? Staff questions? Next item, please.
If not, we can vote on these items. Items 1 and 2 were introduced by Fellers.
So moved. Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook? Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Then items 3, 4, 5, 11, 12, and 13 were introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? Call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next are our public hearing liquor resolutions. I'll call item 15, application of Brewski's Food and Spirits for an addition of a catering license to their existing Class I liquor license at 201 North 8th Street.
Hi, my name's Brian Kitten, 2410 Devonshire Drive, and I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have of us.
Questions for Ms. Kidden? Thank you very much. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call items 16 and 17. They're the application of Fat Ferg's Barbecue Barn for a Class I liquor license at 736 West Cornhusker Highway and the related manager application of Jeffrey Vergeth.
And I am Jeffrey Vergeth.
Would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Thank you.
And my name is Jeffrey Vergeth, and I'm at 4910 Northwest 8th Street, and I'm just here to answer any questions also.
Questions? Tell us a little bit about, I'm going to do this real slowly, Fat Ferg's, because this could come out really, really bad.
Batford started out as a retail barbecue sauce business. We're in stores, 60-some stores across the state in Iowa. And I was trying to broker the sauce out. I was asked why I don't have a restaurant. And my background 20 years ago, I was an executive chef for 13 and a half years. Just decided maybe it was the time to make a change. I worked for the railroad for 21 years. Thought maybe something I wanted to get back into doing. Right now, I'd like to point out we're having troubles getting a loan on the place. But I figured I better attend this and make sure that I got everything in order if this does happen. So if you guys know any bankers that want to help us out.
I knew you were looking at Councilman Camp and not at me. Okay. And the location approximately?
It's at 736 West Cornhusker Highway. It's the old Top Hat Bar.
Gotcha.
Is what we're trying to get into.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we've looked at other places and stuff. So if this one doesn't go through, I may be back to see you again somewhere else. You never know.
Very well. Thank you very much.
Good luck. Thank you.
Good luck. Absolutely. Anybody like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
Next is item 18, application of Blue Blood Brewing for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 70 feet by 90 feet at 500 West South Street, Suite A on April 10th from 4 p.m. to 11:59 p.m.
Hi, Brian Podwinski of Blue Blood Brewing, 9322 South 28th. Just here to answer any questions. We've done this outdoor permit before. We're raising money for the Autism Family Network on this event.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of items 15 through 18.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Questions? Call the roll, please.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Sellers? Motion carried 7-0. Next then is our public hearing ordinance's second reading. Item 20 is accepting and approving an amendment to the lease agreement between the city on behalf of the Health Department and Enterprise Company, Inc. to lease additional space at the current 27th and Cornhusker Highway WIC Clinic. I'm sorry, public hearing resolutions, item 19. Approving the renewal of an interlocal agreement between the city and the Board of Regents to provide, maintain, and update online food handler training program. Thank you, Judy.
Judy Halstead, Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department. As you are aware, we have moved to doing quite a bit of our food handler and food manager training online, and we do this through an agreement with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. This is renewing that agreement. It is before you because it is a 2-year agreement. It's in the amount of $20,000 each year, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, now we'll go on to our public hearing ordinance's second reading. Item 20 is the amendment to the lease agreement between the city, Health Department, and Enterprise to lease additional space at the current 27th and Cornhusker Highway WIC Clinic and extend the term of the lease agreement until October 31st, 2018.
Hopefully that will come up for us. Judy Halstead again, Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department. The agreement you have before you is to utilize the space at our, let me get that, the current location we're using, which is just north of the Super Saver at 27th and Cornhusker for our Women, Infant, Children program. Just as a reminder, these are federal dollars that flow through the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, and we have the opportunity to expand that space. When Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services came through and did a review with us, we have seen the number of clients using that space increase considerably over the last couple of years, primarily because these are families who, while low income, are employed. And the Super Saver that is located at 27th and Cornhusker is the location that the majority, or excuse me, not the majority, but the greatest number of WIC checks that have been cashed are located at that Super Saver. And so a number of years ago, we secured that location, and we've considered almost a double the increase in the users there. And I can show you our main clinic is the blue And while we've seen up and down, we serve about 3,000 clients a month at our main location at 31st and O. We had another location at Lincoln Medical Education Partnership, which is about 46th and Valley Road. We saw those numbers decrease, and so this last year when our lease was up, we chose not to renew that lease. But we have seen, which is the red line, we have just seen a consistent, steady increase with the number of clients at our 27th and Cornhusker location over the last couple of years. We've wanted to maintain that and make sure that those numbers were maintained before we secured some additional space there. And we have worked with Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services that they will pay for the renovation costs, and they will also pay for our additional space there. One of the things that I wanted to let you know about the owner of that location is that she has continued to work with us, and we've extended our lease. She has not increased our lease in the last 8 years, our rent on our lease for the last 8 years. She has kept that flat, and she's also contributing about $3,000 towards the tenant improvements for us. So there won't be any city funds or county funds, for that matter, that will be contributing towards either the expansion or the operations. We expect that all of those will be covered through our agreement with Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. So just wanted to let you know that. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, next would be item 21, approving a contract between the city and Lincoln Haymarket Development Corporation to conduct and regulate a Saturday public market in the Haymarket area, 7th Street from P to Q Streets and P Street from 7th to 8th Streets from May 2nd, 2015 through October 10, 2015. Q Street from 7th to Canopy Streets and Canopy Street from P to Q Streets from May 2nd through October 10th, 2015, and on 8th Street from P to Q Streets from May 2nd through August 29th, 2015.
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Kane with Urban Development Department, and the agreement before you today is to approve the agreement that allows Lincoln, Lincoln Haymarket Development Corporation to operate the Haymarket Farmers Market on Saturday mornings, and I'm here to try and answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item, please come forward.
Linda Hubka, 3169 Puritan Avenue. I'm the Haymarket Farmers Market Manager, and I'm just doing a commercial trying to drop some business down there. So please come down and join us for our 30th Haymarket Farmers Market. 20 more till we hit 50. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call items 22, 23, and 24 together. They are Comp Plan Conformance 15003, declaring approximately 6,668 square feet of property generally located at North 12th and Y Street as surplus. Change of Zone 15006, application of 1100Y LLC for a change from P Public Use to R8 Residential on property generally located at North 12th and Y Street, and approving a real estate sales agreement between the city and 1100Y LLC, authorizing the sale of city-owned surplus property generally located on the east side of North 12th Street between Y and Charleston Streets.
Members of the City Council, David Landis, Urban Development Department Director, the applicant in this case. And if I improve on some of my worst behaviors, I might make those 20 years of the farmer's market. What a wonderful occasion that is. This is about 6,600 square feet in the North Bottoms. It's land that we use 7 times a year for football parking. And we want to sell it, since it is an unbuildable lot, to the Elsie project, as we call it, in the North Bottoms. This is that location now. This square is so that we can have an escape route for Y Street and the frontage road, and this is the small piece that we're selling today. The price is $30,000. This was essentially arrived at by figuring out the revenue that we make on that property and then extending it out to the 15 years of the TIF agreement. So it's 15 years of revenue that we would otherwise receive. It's about $5 a square foot, and this is an unbuildable lot. It will allow parking at location, which then reduces pressure in the neighborhood, which is, we also think, is civic virtue, and we'd ask for the appropriate actions taken by the council to allow the sale to go forward. Are there any questions?
Questions?
Carl. Thank you. Mr. Landis, Y Street, as I understand it, goes around behind the development, and just kind of trace the route. Yeah, okay.
We've previously made arrangements for this piece of property,
Mhm.
and that is what allows the frontage road connect up to the rest of the street system.
Okay.
And that leaves this orphan piece of land that Mr. Elsey would like to use for parking.
Great, thank you.
Questions? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item, please come forward.
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. Has this property been offered publicly for other developers to buy it?
We'll get you an answer to that question.
And is that the assessed valuation? Seems pretty low.
We'll have Mr. Landis answer that when he comes back up.
What?
We'll have Mr. Landis answer that when he comes back up.
Okay.
He's taking notes over there right now. It's your time.
I'm sorry. Okay, I thought you said you would have him come back up.
He will when he rebuts. That's
Okay.
our process.
My other question is, if this is going to be used by a residential, made into residential, is that correct?
Well, I believe it's going to be part of a apartment complex that's there and will be used for parking attached to that, but we'll get a clarification for that when he comes up.
And is this in reference to the one last week?
No, this one I believe was
Different?
approved many months ago, many months ago, and they're actually, it's out of the ground and
Okay.
it's beautiful green color if you drive down there.
I guess that's my questions.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Mr. Landis, could you answer the questions, please? Thank you, appreciate it.
We did put up signs that told the public the land was for sale. However, this is one of two exceptions that exist in the AR2 regulation, and those two exceptions are when you're selling an unbuildable lot to an abutting landowner, or you are trading land to an abutting landowner. So while we wouldn't be required to do that, we in fact did that. Okay. Secondly, with respect to assessed valuation, I'm not sure the assessed valuation. This has been city-owned land and has not been paying taxes up until now. It will be paying taxes once the sale is completed. Third, it is in furtherance of a residential unit, but it will not be for residency purposes itself. Councilman Emery correctly identified this as future parking. And lastly, this isn't the project from last week. It's a number of months ago. And in fact, the building process is in the midst of working. And if you drove by it, you'd see the complex being completed even as we speak.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Carl. Yes,
Dave.
Mr. Landis,
Dave.
before you speak away. Okay. My recollection is when this development came before us, that the
it had to be moved a little bit because it was too close to the railroad tracks. You can't occupy residences within, I don't remember how many feet, 300 feet maybe it is of a railroad track. And so this land, which actually abuts the track, really has no use except probably for parking.
This does not occasion the same set of health concerns that justify the 300 buffer foot limitation. So it meets all regulations that we know of, and this use is an appropriate one. The land is essentially orphaned land that we have made use of 7 times a year, and that's it. So its utilization will go up in furtherance of what I think is widely regarded as a positive addition to the community.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? My recollection too is one of the neighborhood concerns was parking in the neighborhood, and this will help provide off-street parking. And
that's right. There is a parking concern there now.
Correct.
With the residences because there are so many students, and each one seems to have a car, some of whom have parked in their front lawns. And the structures, and I think there were 14 of them, as I recall, that were purchased, were among those chief parking offenders. That's gone. However, in its place is a substantial number of parking spaces for the intended residences.
Okay, thank you. Anybody like to speak to this item? Thank you. Next item, please.
All right, I'll call items 25 through 28. They are annexation 15003, amending the Lincoln corporate limits map by annexing approximately 59.72 acres of property generally located at South 84th and Van Dorn. Change of zone 15005, application of FT Development 2, Inc. for a change of zone from AGR Agricultural to R1 Residential, from AGR Agricultural to O3 Office Park, and from O3 Office Park to R1 Residential on property located at South 84th and Van Dorn. Use permit 15005, application of FT Development 2, Inc. for a use permit to allow an office park having approximately 225,000 square feet of office floor area that could alternately be developed as a 150-unit apartment complex with a waiver to setbacks on property located at South 84th and Van Dorn. And approving an amendment to the annexation agreement between the city and FT Development 2, Inc. regarding cost responsibilities for municipal services associated with the annexation, maintenance responsibilities, and other appropriate matters related to the development of land within the previously approved Firethorn CUP on property generally located at Van Dorn Street from 84th to 91st. Whew, thanks, Danae.
Good afternoon, members of the council. Danae Kalkowski. I'm appearing today on behalf of Firethorn Development 2, the applicant on these 4 items that are in front of you today. Also here is Mark Weibel, a principal of the applicant, and also Firethorn Golf Company, the owner of the property, and then Brad Marshall from Olson Associates, and they'll both be available if you have questions when we're done here. But the package of applications before you today permit the annexation and development of approximately 60 acres. We're located east of 84th Street and south of Van Dorn. This is an area that was previously occupied by the 9-hole course. And so we're moving forward with development of this area and some reconfiguration of some of the golf holes. But there are really 3 main components to the proposed development. There's a change of zone to O3 on approximately 18 acres right here at the corner. It's going to include this big use here. The change of zone is to O3. It'll be for 225,000 square feet of office use. The zoning on this is consistent. We have O3 zoning of our neighbor to the south and down through here, so it's shown as commercial in the comp plan, so consistent with the comp plan and some surrounding zoning. We're asking for R1 zoning on the rest of the area. That's really going to allow 2 components. There's a new recreational facility that's proposed through here called the Resort. It's going to be more of a family-friendly type recreational facility with some outdoor amenities, and then also reconfiguring some of the golf holes. And then we're also doing R1 zoning over there to the east along the west side of 91st Street, which will allow the addition of 34 new townhomes and 9 single-family lots. And so earlier there was also an amendment to the special permit that went along with that residential use, but that had final approval at Planning Commission. There were a couple main goals that Firethorn was trying to accomplish, I think, with this development. Number one, to develop land uses that were compatible with the existing office users that are already out there, and then the Firethorn residential uses. And then second, really to put together a development that would preserve the character of those existing uses and try to be sensitive to the wetland and drainage ways that we have out here, because we have a couple significant areas that contain wetlands and natural drainage ways. As to the first goal, it started early on with Mark Weibel having multiple meetings with the Firethorn neighbors out here. That was basically started at the end of 2014. A formal meeting was held in January where all the existing residential homeowners were invited. And all of that occurred before we even submitted any applications. Then had individual meetings with some of those office neighbors out here. And finally, we wound it up with an invitation for all of our other neighbors to the north and to the west and northwest to come. And no one showed up, but we did have a couple of our neighbors west of 84th call and just go over the project with us. So in all of that, no real opposition to the project. And in fact, no one came to talk about us at Planning Commission. So I think Mark's done a good job of being sensitive to needs and uses out here. But as you might imagine, trying to develop a plan and layout that's sensitive to the existing environment, but yet trying to meet new standards is always a challenge. And so I just want to thank Planning Department and city staff for working through a lot of those issues with us. We had several reiterations of the plan and resubmitted plans, and I think we were able to work on some compromises that worked for everybody. So we end up with a plan here today, I think, that Planning Department supported. Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval, and so we are asking for your approval here today. We have the annexation agreement, changes of zone, and then the use permit. So 4 different applications before you. And myself, Mark, or Brad would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Carl? Okay. Thank you. The first installment you mentioned at the corner of 84th and Van Dorn, excuse me, is you indicated is intended to be office space, but also I read something about apartments. So is that decided that it will be office, or?
Well, the zoning is O3, so technically the O3 zone would allow not only office uses but a residential or apartment uses. Right now, the conditions of approval would require them to come back in with an administrative amendment if they wanted to change it to apartments, because there's sensitivity to that gas line that's in 84th Street and potential setback area along there. We also have some private covenants out there that would affect the ability to use it for apartments.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Just for interest, what was the response of the golfers when you said you were going to rearrange some of the holes? I'm gonna make you step out. I apologize. You have to identify yourself, so I'm gonna make you do that too.
Mark Weibel, I'm with Firethorn. I don't do this very often, so I'll. The Championship 18 is going to stay intact, and that's the vast majority of our members enjoy the use of that. The West 9 had previously been under a lease for about 5 years. At the end of that period, we feel like we are going to create a neat little par 3 golf course that's going to be a great little amenity for our recreational facility. So it's going to tie in real nicely with new pool, tennis, workout facilities, and then kind of a family-friendly restaurant that's going to be there. So we're trying to make this, the par 3 course be really for kids being able to learn the game, and for ladies to be able to feel a little less pressure to be able to be there, and then hopefully create atmosphere where dad and the kids can get together afterwards and go swat it around in an hour, so.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Thank you, and I apologize for this morning saying it was on the the northeast corner. I'm directionally challenged to a certain extent.
The only direction you know.
It
isn't
is the only direction I know. South just doesn't come out of my mouth very good. I apologize. Next item, please.
All right, I'll call item 29, amending chapter 4.66 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to redesignate the City Audit Advisory Board as the City Performance Audit Committee by revising and deleting current definitions, establishing said committee and its membership, providing for the member's term of service and conditions for removal from office, defining the duties and powers of the committee, excuse me, providing that the committee meet regularly on at least a quarterly basis, and replacing references to board with committee.
Hello, Jeff Kirkpatrick, Lincoln City Attorney. This proposed ordinance change amends the chapter 4.66 of the Lincoln Municipal Code, the City Audit Advisory Board. It makes a relatively few number of changes, but they are very significant changes. It renames the City Audit Advisory Board the City Performance Audit Committee. It changes the membership of that committee. Currently, there are 6 members on that committee, 3 that are selected by the mayor and 3 that are selected by the city council. The new membership of the committee would be 5, 2 that are appointed by the mayor, and 3 that are not only elected by the city council, but also are city council members. It also imposes on both the city council members and the mayoral appointments that they be from different parties. So there's some attempt to have some partisan balance on the new committee. The term limits for the council members would be 2 years. There is no term limits for the council members. The term limits for the mayoral appointments will be 3 years with a term limit of 6 years total. There is a requirement, which does not exist now, but would under the new ordinance, that there be at least one performance audit recommendation made each year by August 31st of that year. There currently is no requirement, so that the city council can go for several years without doing any sorts of audits whatsoever. And it also requires that the committee meet at least quarterly under the code provisions. The quorum and the requirements for taking action currently are 4 out of 6, and that would change to 3 out of 5 under the new structure of the committee.
Questions? Go ahead, Trent.
Yeah, I want to thank Jeff for his help in putting this together. This is something that I brought to him and introduced and then pulled back on another one last week. But I think this is an improvement on what we originally had put together and I introduced. And I think it provides a little bit of balance from both the council and the mayor's office, because we'll have 3 council members and 2 members of the public that are appointed by the mayor. And we're going to do an audit every year, which I think will be great. It gives the committee something to do, and I think it's important for us always to be looking for ways that we can improve the efficiency of city government, and this is one way that we can do that. There is $65,000 that is in the budget currently for the old committee that we can now use for an audit in the next year when the new council comes in. I'm talking to the mayor's office about budget for the following fiscal year, but we're a little bit premature on that. But I appreciate the administration's help. I appreciate the other members of the council that talked to me about this, and I appreciate Jeff's work. His advice has been really great, and I think we put together a pretty good ordinance, and I appreciate support on voting this forward.
Questions? Larry?
Trent, could you talk a little more? We had some conversation about what you anticipate the fiscal impact is of the ordinance and sort of anticipated range of costs for performance audits.
Yeah, and this is something that I've looked at professionally. I've wrote RFPs for audits before, and typically they've ranged from anywhere from about $50,000 to $100,000. I think we can get that accomplished I think we can accomplish the goals of this committee. And another thing, that this isn't where we're just going to go out and hire an auditing firm. We can hire a professional in a certain capacity, say they're an engineer, or say they're someone who's skilled and has knowledge of operations of any number of departments. So it's not like we have to hire a whole auditing team with their computers to come down here and do something. We can hire a professional that has some experience in operations in a specific target and target that towards what this committee is trying to accomplish. So I think that's a distinctive change as well.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item, please come forward.
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. We are in support of this movement because efficiency and transparency are part of our charge as watchdogs of Lincoln government. It's a sad situation that this previous committee has not been used for several times, and we called for a financial audit of TIF several years ago, and that has not been has not occurred. I hope that'll be number one on the agenda for this group. I'm a little concerned about the members being appointed by the mayor, because he, of course, will probably appoint people who are in agreement with him, and we have some concerns about that. An even better audit would be using people from the community to follow through with that, so that the public can be sure that it will be transparent, that there will be no connections with the of city officials in order to get that done. And also the council will be on this. Hopefully they will be able to be free agents in order to make their information known, their approval of what information is given to them. Also, we would like to encourage that financial audits would be done on many of the departments in the city council, or excuse me, in the city membership. Are these committees going to meet definitely on a certain day, quarterly? Is that open to debate? It'd be good for the public to know that these will be meeting regularly, and that they would be able to have input as to what they know about this. As I go about the city, as I have met down here, I even have employees come up to me and tell me that things need to be investigated about what's going on down here. Now, you might say that this is disgruntled employees, but even Senator Groen has said that some people in Lincoln had spoken to him about irregularities in the TIF program that goes on in the Department of Urban Development. So all reflections, people who speak up from the public should be given credence.
1 minute.
For what they have to say. Of course, you'd like to cut me off, wouldn't you?
The rules are pretty clear. I gave you a minute. That's what you're entitled to, Jane.
Okay. I'm making a joke.
Missed it, sorry.
I just clarified it for you.
Thanks.
Okay, that's all I have to say.
Anybody else? I'm sorry. Trent?
I can answer the question. In the new ordinance, it says they'll hold regular meetings, a minimum of quarterly basis, and that the records will be public.
Okay.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item?
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Post. I'm here today representing the Lincoln Independent Business Association, and we are pleased to support this measure to restructure the Audit Advisory Board to create a performance audit committee in an effort to increase the efficiency of city government. When the Audit Advisory Board was originally formed in 2007, LIBA was a strong proponent. However, this board has completed only 4 audits in the 8 years of its existence, and today it rarely meets. This measure revamps and restructures that board to create the Performance Audit Committee and requires it to actively conduct audits. It also places a greater emphasis on performance audits, thus enabling the committee to find greater efficiencies and allow the city to stretch its dollars further. Yet one obstacle still remains. $65,000 from the Audit Advisory Board will carry over to this Performance Audit Committee, but no future funding source is identified. LIBA would encourage this committee to specifically identify the scope of their audits to contain costs. LIBA also recognizes that the Performance Audit Committee can only be effective if adequate resources are made available. In future budgets, the mayor and city council should consider funds allocated to this committee as an investment in good government and an investment that has the potential to yield high returns. So with that, LIBA would like to thank Councilperson Fellers for bringing this measure forward and encourage the council's support.
Questions? Thank you. Anybody who else who'd like to speak to this item, please come forward. If you're coming to speak, come right on down front so we'll know you're coming.
Hi, Barbara Arndt. Recently expired member of the current Audit Advisory Board. Just a few comments listening to the folks here, and I had a question for Trent. Something I heard was you have here in your ordinance a contract auditors shall mean the person with whom the city contracts at the discretion of the committee or at the direction of the committee to perform the contract audit, but you're allowing non-CPA, non-accounting professionals to do that? And what did you mean by a professional?
Yeah, and I can certainly answer that. There may be areas where we're doing a performance audit that may not fall under like the skill set that a CPA would be looking at. So if we were doing something on streets or sidewalks or how we do that program, we might hire someone that's skilled in that area, like an engineer or civil engineer that might be better suited for that type of work.
Okay. Just having been on this board for many years, when were you elected city council?
2 years ago.
2013. I think you and the rest of you would remember our board sent a letter out on, I think it was March 14th, 2014.
That's right.
One of our duties was performance audit, and we had suggested a list of things. In fact, I think that was our second letter to this board about what we can do. Actually, Jane's not here. TIF was brought up as a performance audit feature, and we never did hear back from you. So in all fairness, as we were then and as this ordinance stands today, this board is still at the direction of the city council. We can't move without an ordinance directive resolution from the city council. So I feel good about this ordinance. In fact, that you are, requiring minimum set meetings, and it will be based on performance audits. It sounds like there's not going to be any time for financial audits. If you took a look at our history, how long some of those audits took, it wasn't that we were, necessarily slow. It was the process, and 60 days for, the RFP, and 30 days to respond, and another 60. I mean, you're talking 2 quarters before you may or may not get any response from the auditee, or the people performing the audit themselves. So just be wary that things don't happen that quickly in real life. Performance audits can be very expensive, probably closer to your higher number. So if you're committing $100,000 a year of city tax dollars, I want everybody to be aware that Mr. Fellers does indeed prescribe to that. They are very, very expensive and time intensive. We were asked to do, I think, a performance audit from Councilman Adam.
Horning.
Yes, I can't remember his last name. And because of the scope of the audit was, police performance audit Public Works, which when we were looking at that different aspects of that, it was going to turn out to be over $150,000. So we had to narrow the scope. So it's not as simple as go do it and do it for $50,000. So I just want to make you wary of that.
Yeah, no, and I'm having gone through this before and looked at writing an RFP for the scope of work for an audit. How you narrow those items that you want the auditor to look at is very important, and how you put the package together, because your range of bids could be very, very high or very, very low, depending on what controls you're having them look at. So I'm very cognizant of that.
Lastly, I just want to go on record and say we're going from 6 people from the general public, which if you can't get any more transparent than that, I don't know how you can do it. And you're narrowing the scope down to 3/5 of this committee will be from you folks. So if that's transparent, if you're going to be the fox looking out for the chicken coop, I wish you well. But I hope it gets the work done that it was meant to be, because we were seriously underworked for the last 7 years, and we hope we see some progress and outcome from this new structure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Larian.
You mentioned that you did a performance audit. Was that of StarTran, or did you do a smaller performance audit of Public Works? Or can you talk a little bit about
we narrowed it down to of the engineering services of, that was a division of Public Works. There was some issues of how it looked from the outside in terms of too many city engineers, and can we get public engineers and charge less money? But as it turned out, and it is public record, it is on the city website, that it was deemed that the structure of the engineering services of the Public Works Department was running very highly effective and efficiently, and they were not going to save any money by divvying more work out to private engineers, just because the way the contracts and workloads and overhead and things like that worked out.
Were there other performance audits that you were part of? I guess what I'm trying to get to is, in your experience with performance audits, did you find that there were, in addition to performance efficiencies within operations, which are always a good thing, were there actual cost savings that were larger than the amount spent on the performance audit?
The largest audit, I believe, was of StarTran, and part of that did include performance, and that was back in the days of Larry Worth. And as far as I could tell, their response was very good and positive, and we'll work on this and that and the other. And I think the new person there has taken up the lead and taken some of our ideas that came out of that audit. But we have yet to see, it's just kind of a longer process to see how the monies work out and if efficiencies are found. But that was quite expensive. I think that was close to $100,000 for that entire system.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Barbara, one of the things that, in defense of the council, is just this whole idea that this kind of got thrown together with the person who I think really pushed it left the council, and then there just never seemed to be a structure that everybody could find. I appreciate Trent doing this, and I appreciate it. I don't think the intent was not to. I think the intent was which direct. I mean, it's kind of like it's just circular. You just kind of keep going around in circles. So I think this will be a much better. The other thing is, even with 2 members of the public, it would be a little difficult for council members to do something nefarious and the word "not" get out from those two people, wouldn't it?
Well, I did notice the only people that are allowed to remove other committee members are just the members that came from the city council. If, the other members committed some malfeasance, or it's an at-will committee, or will be an at-will committee.
I have every bit of confidence that if a city council person does something nefarious on there, it will be almost instantaneously on one of the radio stations in the afternoon.
You think so?
Yeah, kind of. Is that a fair statement?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. John?
No, I think you've made some good observations and appreciate your service as well as the other members. And so I hope that you'll still remain vocal and help and see as this would proceed. And maybe there's some fine tuning that needs to be done. I mean, the whole idea is to help the government operate more efficiently. And
well, yeah,
so
and I
learn
guess
from your experiences, that would be great.
I guess in the verbiage, if you want to go after quote unquote programs like TIF, you're going to have to get a little more specific, because in terms of the verbiage in here, I think it just described agencies. It didn't describe programs, so you may want to amend to be allowed to performance audit. Yeah, auditee would be a city office, department, agency, or other governmental organization. So TIF is not either or any of those things, so you may want to, if that was the gist of part of the goal of this committee.
Okay.
The other good thing about this is that if we vote to approve this, there'll be at least 2 other sets of eyes that will look at it in the not distant future. So they may see something that the very things that you talked to that we need to. This is a living document. It doesn't have to be written in stone. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Right on up.
Good afternoon. I'm Jerry Finnegan. I'm a current member of the City Audit Advisory Committee. I'm in the middle of my sort of second term. I was appointed to fill out Chuck Pallison's residual term, and now I'm on the first appointment of my own. I agree with everything that Barb had pointed out. We only act when you direct us to, so any inactivity that may have been perceived isn't our fault. Also,
Agreed.
We can act to the extent that we are funded, as you will be able to do. One thing I think that might be lost with the new ordinance is that just being members of the community and the way we have worked on the activities that we have, it has been a very collegial sort of grouping. I frankly do not know what the partisan lineup is of this committee. I have some suspicions on some people, but we always worked well together, just trying to get to the objective. The council auditing the mayor's staff, I can see where partisanship could creep into that. And I would hope if this ordinance is passed, there would be some kind of firewall to prevent real problems from occurring in that situation, particularly as outside interest groups might try to drive this body to bore in a particular direction. So that would be my comments, and that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Finnegan?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Questions of Trent? Next item.
All right, that concludes our public hearing. We can move into the voting session.
Go ahead.
Hearing resolutions, item 19, approving the renewal of an interlocal agreement between the city and the Board of Regents to provide, maintain, and update online food handler training program, introduced by Fellers.
So moved. Second.
Second by Roy. Discussion? Call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers? Motion carried 7-0. Public hearing ordinances second reading are items 20 through 29. Item 30 is amending Chapter 2.04 of the Lincoln Municipal Code, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second by Roy. Discussion? Jonathan?
I move motion to amend number 1.
Second.
And this, as the law department has indicated at the bottom, is to clean up new language and provide further clarification and consistency. However, I did spot one error. So I move that we amend the amendment so that change number 30 has the word item instead of the word bill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Larian.
Thought we caught them all. We
Go
missed
ahead.
that one. So, nope, that's my only correction.
All right. Any discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Discussion on the amendment? Well, I would say to Jonathan, I appreciated the patience of Job to go through this and find these things. It will certainly, I think, make a cleaner product when we're all done. I'm amazed. So thank you very much on behalf of the rest of the council. Call the roll, please.
All right, this is on motion to amend number 1. Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Main amendment, discussion on the main. Jonathan.
Want to thank our city attorney, Jeff Kirkpatrick, for his patience. He spent many hours on the phone with me discussing hypotheticals, and I appreciate all that time he spent and making comments and fixing.
And commas.
Commas. A lot of discussion of commas, yes. And so that was definitely appreciated, his attention to the detail here.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Well, Jeff, thank you very much. I appreciate also the work, too. It would have been a very interesting conversation to listen to for about 5 minutes. Call the roll, please.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Resolutions on first reading are items 31 through 34. We have no ordinances on first reading.
Mr. Chair, I'd move adjournment.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
We are adjourned. Thank you.